My parents owned a few condos that they rented out in Florida. While I was in college, I helped them out with repairs, cleanup, and miscellaneous things that they needed done at the time. It could be hard work at times, but it was also steady income, so I didn't have to worry about it while in school. They definitely got some really weird tenants and situations at times. Here's a few in particular that I remember having the pleasure to deal with. My parents had rented a condo to a younger couple one year. They did their normal interview, but learned they didn't have much in the way of a rental background. My dad was always a softie and was more willing to give people a chance though, so they agreed to let them move in for a higher deposit plus last month's rent, so they at least had some money in the bank in case anything went sour. Everything was fine for like 5 or 6 months. Then they started calling about plumbing issues. We had never had issues reported before, so thought maybe they just clogged it. My dad went out there and checked on it and had to have it snaked when they pulled out a condom. I remember the conversation as my dad tried to explain what it was to my mom, and I thought it was funny at first. But then it would set in that these grown adults tried to flush this. So he had to explain to them that they can't flush stuff like that. They promised they wouldn't and moved on from there. From then, we stopped hearing from them at all. Instead of dropping off a check or cash at my parents' place, they started mailing money orders. Then they stopped getting rent altogether. They tried calling several times and they never answered. It appeared like they were purposely ignoring their calls, as it would go to voicemail after ringing 2 to 3 times. So I tried calling from my phone. The guy answered, and when I started introducing myself, he hung up on me, and then the girl never picked up from then on. After 4 months of no payments, my parents filed the order to evict them since they wouldn't even talk to them. I went with my dad and the cop to give the order. After knocking several times and no answer, my dad unlocked the door and the smell immediately hit us. It reeked of cigarette smoke, and the unit is supposed to be non-smoking. The walls were painted a sand color, and you could see the streaks of brown from the nicotine. There was trash all over the kitchen and crammed in corners, under the bed and the couch. There were dishes piled up on one side of the sink with the darkest water with a green-looking foam forming on it. It was disgusting. And even better, the toilet looked like it was busted in the back and brown on the inside like it hadn't been used in a while. It was obvious the place was abandoned and just left like this, so we were going to have to start cleaning it. After a few days of cleaning, my dad told me that he would have to replace the toilet and asked me to go over there to sign for it as they were going to be delivering it there, so I agreed. I got to the condo, go to unlock the door, when I realized it was cracked open some. My dad changed the locks, so my first thought was maybe he had gotten there before I did and just didn't bother telling me. So I walked in, called out for my dad, and the next thing I remember was an awful pain in the back of my head. Then I remember some guy standing over me asking me my name, if I knew where I was, things like that. Apparently the previous tenants had come back for their stuff and were shocked that they couldn't get into the place and broke a window around back to get in. I also spooked them and they decided to smack me in the back of the head with a rubber mallet, knocking me out cold and stealing like $60 from my wallet. The guy that was bringing the toilet saw the door was open, saw me lying on the floor, and called an ambulance. We never saw them again, but my parents and I filed charges in case they ever try to come back. I was just thankful that's all they did, as they could have left me in a much worse condition. Another weird one was an older lady that moved in. She had been there for a long time. I remember going over there for random maintenance things like helping with the AC, air filters, or light bulbs that she couldn't reach. She kept the place clean for the most part, but I think she started getting Alzheimer's or something as she started acting differently. My own grandfather had it, so I recognized some of the same things she did or said. She started calling for the same maintenance things within the same month or weeks, even though they didn't need attention, and it got harder and harder to explain to her that we've already done it, as she wouldn't believe us. Thankfully, she did have kids that came over sometimes to check on her, and they told us that they were going to be moving her into a nursing home. Again, my dad being who he was, he told them not to worry about the lease as long as they got her stuff out, so we didn't have to, and we would call it even. They took a few weeks to get everything out, but it was less than a month, and we went in to start cleaning. They got most of the stuff out and was actually still pretty clean. We were thinking it was going to be a pretty simple job until we opened the fridge. It was pretty gross. The back inner wall was covered in a dark, sticky liquid. There was stuff spilled all over the bottom of the fridge. I don't know if it was blood or food that leaked, but I remember having to basically use a metal scraper to get it all off. But in the bottom drawer of the fridge, there was a loose plastic bag. I grabbed it, ready to throw it in the trash, when I noticed it was super light, but whatever was in it kind of moved around like rice or beads. So stupid, curious me opened it up to see what it was. It was full of teeth, and not like human teeth either, but cat or dog teeth, because there were a lot of those long fang-like ones. And there was a lot in there. And even worse, I never saw an animal in this place while she was here, so I have no idea where the hell they came from. I don't know what Granny was doing in her spare time, but I'm glad I was never on her bad side. Those were two that I remember really well, because they were probably some of the weirdest ones, but they've definitely had all kinds of weirdos in there. I still occasionally help them, but I have a full-time job now, which I prefer instead of cleaning up after others. People are too damn weird and hard to trust.